Hey guys, I'm here with Ben and Jonathan. Would you guys like to introduce yourselves?
Okay, I am. My name is Jonathan. I am an INFJ, and I'm here to talk about the Enneagram. And this is Ben. Ben.
Yes, I resemble an INTP, LII in Socionics, and this is the controversial bit, 7 in Enneagram. Jonathan thinks 5. And I think Jonathan resembles a 1 in Enneagram. He's a bit of a perfectionist and a reformer.
What do you mean? What do you mean? Think you've been doing 70 videos with me? You should know by now.
Well, we cannot say for absolutely sure that you are equivalent with a theoretical model.
I can.
Okay.
But anyway.
Very good.
Anyway.
Yeah, I'd just like to say, if you want to check out my comedy stage play, it's on Lulu, Wilma, and Raina. Now we'll... and so on my channel, that Emily has kindly endorsed recently, you'll find its main... I've got it on the little disc. I've got it as like Socionics, Kersey, Enneagram. And if you're interested in any of those three, I think it's the place to go. It doesn't concentrate so much on MBTI, although I usually talk about the types using the MBTI codes, so it's understandable to MBTI people.
Okay. So hopefully you can understand our accents.
Just say where you're from.
Yes. Well, Ben is from England. I am from Scotland. So you have an Englishman, a Scotsman, and a Marshmallow Man. He will be sitting watching.
Yes. Fantastic.
Yes. So, yeah. Any questions before we start?
I don't have any questions, and I don't see any questions in the chat yet. So,
okay. So
referring to the chat.
Right.
So, you guys were talking about showing the Enneagrams, diagram. You want me to show it while?
Yeah, if you. Otherwise, it'll only appear on screen when I talk. So if you want the audience to see it, just
click on it.
Click on the square so that you got a white border around it.
Okay, I'll just go do that. Just let me know, Jonathan, when you're ready to talk about it.
Oh, I'm ready now. Okay, so you wanted to know what the Enneagram is for the audience. Right, so okay, when it comes to typology, the thing to keep in mind is that Myers-Briggs is, we call it your personality type, but it's more accurately your cognitive style. It's a way of processing, judging, and perceiving the world. And a dog. Oh. Oh. Okay, so it's not Myers-Briggs type. Your Jungian type is not your whole personality. It's only one aspect of your personality. The Enneagram is more like your cognitive style. Cognitive is an old-fashioned word referring to drives and motivations, so on. So the Enneagram is a map of your cognitive style, your cognitive drive, your drives, and so on. Another one would be Freudian psychology and stuff. So essentially, we're talking about things like altruism, narcissism, paranoia, aggression, all these things that you would normally associate with psychology, which is where it distinguishes from your Myers-Briggs type. So you get, if you combine the two together, you get a more complete view of who you are as a person. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
okay.
and I'll just say if somebody might have and it can frequently help when somebody has a problem typing themselves and they feel that they don't feel seen in the descriptions, and they might have like an odd combination. So, for example, we know someone called an INTP resembler Laura, but because she resembles the 6, it makes her seem SJ-ish, and so she sort of feels she's in between certain types. So it can help with people helping to get at their type.
Yeah. So how I try and imagine it is, if you can picture two circles, like one circle would be your Jungian type, and one would be your Enneagram type, and there's kind of a blurry overlap between the two, where there's a degree of crossover, but generally they're distinct. So yeah, it can help understand why you're not quite relating to descriptions. It can also help you identify what your type is in one system or another. If you, for example, if you're a 5, you're likely to be an INTP or an INTJ. If you're a 1, you'll probably be a judger. If you're a 2, you will probably be a feeler and probably not an INFp or ISFP. If you're a 3, you'll probably be an extrovert, especially a thinking extrovert. If you're a 4, you will probably be a feeling type and an introvert feeling type. Mostly INFP, ISFP, and INFJ, usually. I mentioned 5s already. 6s can be almost any type. 7s are usually extroverts and perceivers, so ENFP, ESFP, ENTP, and ESTP. 8s are usually extroverts, particularly thinking extroverts again, sometimes feeling extroverts. Usually not ESFJ though. And 9s are usually any of the introverts and some extroverts, like ENFP and ESFP. So yeah, so there's 9 Enneagram types in the Enneagram system, and more specifically, there are 9 core types, and they're all numbered. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. They do have names, but the numbers are better because they're more neutral. And I was going to say something else and I'm lost.
So this is a table of correlations that Jonathan came up with, and I sort of did it as a graphic. And we can refer back to this. Once we've explained a certain type, we can then say what the relationships usually are as a shorthand between the two. But I gotta. Oh, this was when Jonathan suggested a video.
Yeah, move on.
No, we're moving on.
That's totally off topic.
I'm trying to find an image. I found that again. Yeah.
Okay. So the Enneagram itself is just a circle with 9 points, as you can see there. So if you think of a hexagram or a pentagram, this is just the 9-point version of those. The symbol itself is very ancient. It's been around for 2,000 years or so, if not longer, and it's been used in all kind of mystical traditions over the ages. But in the last few decades, it was adopted for a particular personality system. Basically, a man called Claudio Naranjo, who is an American psychologist from South America, but he lives in America now. He heard of this man called Oscar Ichazo back down in South America, and he was teaching something called the Enneagon or Enneagram, which was more of a spiritualist model. So Dr. Naranjo went down there, learned about Ichazo's system, and came back and refined it into his own, more or less his own version, called the Enneagram. It's which he added a lot of psychoanalysis and Freudian stuff to it to explain it, and it's developed over the last 50 odd years. So a lot of the stuff that he taught originally is a bit out of date. Over time, it's become much more sophisticated and complex. Originally, he was looking at it from a Freudian perspective, where your personality was basically the result of a trauma. Like he was imagining that basically every single child had some sort of experience that traumatized them, and that's where their personality came from. But nowadays we don't teach that. Nowadays this is more, it's thought that your personality is something you're born with, or your Enneagram type is something you're born with, or at the very least if it was really, really early. So it's a combination of nature and nurture, but leading more nature. And your type is how you experience your early childhood. So, for example, it used to be taught that type 8s, which are the more aggressive assertive type, it used to be taught that they had bad experiences, like a really rough childhood, and many reported that. But when they were pressed further, they realised that, or they admitted that, well, they did have those rough experiences, but even before them, they were still quite the handful. They were still quite assertive and aggressive children. So with training, you can actually see someone's personality type, someone's Enneagram type, very early on, like even like when they're just a couple of years old.
This is a little bit on the origins of it. This is taken from the Reeser and Hudson book, Personality Types. And so this is, I'd like to find out a little bit more about, because I've tried to mention to some of the Socionics people if they speak Russian. Well, what about this guy here, this Gurdjieff guy?
Yeah, so Gurdjieff was a Russian mystic who traveled to South America, and he taught the Enneagram. And so I think there's a debate. I think it used to be taught that Oscar Ichazo, who I talked about, got the Enneagram from him. But apparently Ichazo said no, he didn't. So it's a bit murky. But he taught, basically Gurdjieff used the Enneagram in his teachings, and Ichazo used it in his, and so on. But yeah, most of the stuff we're learning about is from that guy, Claudio Naranjo. He initially taught some of his friends, and he also, one of his friends was actually, one of his early students was a guy called David Daniels who worked at Stanford University, and he got them to teach it at Stanford for a while. After that, he also taught Christian groups, particularly Jesuit groups, so there's a Christian Enneagram tradition. But over the decades, it's been taught to all kinds of people. Some overall, it's what we call a psycho-spiritual system, which means it's part psychology and it's part spiritualism. So there's different Enneagram groups, Enneagram schools, and some will be more spiritual and others will be more psychological. And what I'm learning, what I do, is more on the psychological side of things.
This would, yeah, I would just say that people learn in different ways, and so Jonathan's given an overview. But when I see Dario Nardi's books, it's like sometimes at the beginning he gives like a sneak peek. So this would be an example of, because this type here, the Enneagram Type 5, a lot of INTJs and INTPs can relate to this. It's about like 90% of INTPs will relate to this. So this is a kind of an example of the kind of things that you get in Enneagram, where it goes to the core drives and things like that. So this is just a sneak peek at the kind of depth, and this is just an overview of the kind of depth that you get from an Enneagram point of view.
Yeah, these are all core beliefs and core issues of Enneagram 5. There's also a lot of introversion in there, and a lot of so many introverts will, particularly if they're introverts and intuitives, make it 5 on tests, even if it's really just because they're introverts. But yeah, well, in general, this is just a brief overview.
Yeah, we'll now zoom out back to the whole thing. Back to Jonathan.
I don't know if you guys can hear that in the background.
Yeah, we can hear that.
Come here. Oh, okay, whoa. Oh my gosh. Hey!
Oh.
Henry! I am so sorry. He was...
That's it makes that. I love it when stuff goes wrong because it gets. No, I mean when I'm doing it when stuff goes wrong. I'm not like Schadenfreude.
Sorry, you better back up. You better back up. You're gonna get your balls snipped off.
That's a highlight. That is a highlight. Emily, that bit.
Yeah, Ben, can you bring up the actual Enneagram image?
Okay, so what do you want me to show you?
The original one that you found today, just before you started.
Okay, I will find the wheel. And I will quickly zoom out and go back to the wheel.
Oh, do you have a dog and a cat?
Yes. Yeah, no, he was attacking my cat.
Oh, I see that.
Yeah.
I'll put that back.
What are the names?
This is Pumpkin.
Uh-huh.
There we go.
And then Henry is the dog. And then I have another cat named Fleur.
Named Fleur?
Yes.
Right. So you've got a zoo in there. Okay, so in the Enneagram, what we're seeing here is these are the 9 types, but you can see that they're divided into 3 parts. So type 8, 9, and 1 are part of what's called the body center or the gut center. Type 2, 3, and 4 are part of the heart center or image center. And types 5, 6, and 7 are part of the head center or thinking center. These 3 centers deal with anger, shame, and anxiety, respectively, and they deal with all kind of other things. But basically, everyone has anger and everyone has shame, anxiety. But for some people, one thing will be more of an issue than others. One will be more central to who you are than others. You can kind of see these 9 types as actually variations of each center. So type 8, type 9, type 1 you could see is actually the same type in a sense, just variations of the same issues, because they all are to do with how you manage anger, how you experience anger, what makes you angry. It also has to do with your convictions, and it has to do with feeling strong and being able to endure things and trying to have a sense of control over your environment and an ability to resist the environment. Types 2, 3, and 4 are about shame, but they're also about your emotions in general, and they're also about the image you want to present. So very often it's about how someone dresses. Any of it's not as definitely about how someone would like to be seen and the kind of feedback they're wanting to get from others. Like, do you want to be seen as a good person? Do you want to be seen as a successful person? Do you want to be seen as special or unique? So on. And 5, 6, and 7 are about anxiety and what makes you anxious. Is your anxiety caused by something outside yourself, or is it caused by something inside yourself? Is it something that you experience all the time?
Walk away for a moment.
It's okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. Is it about? It's also your learning styles. That's a good. It's not the same sense as your Jungian type, but more in the sense of what motivates you to learn. What are you trying to get out of learning? So, are you wanting to go really in depth with a narrow range of subjects, or are you focused more on breadth and learning a whole lot about not very much? Are you easily distracted, or are you focused? Are you looking for authorities? Are you trying to calm your anxieties, and so on? So, yeah, those are the 3 centers, and everyone has all of these types in a sense, but you'll have them in a particular order. And I'm not sure if I should continue until she comes back. Okay, that's good. Yeah, so the gut is your instincts, and it says intuition, but intuition's a little bit different in young. It's your natural, it's your inner strength and your convictions and your immediate unconscious reactions to something that makes you angry or feel threatened, your ability to assert yourself. The heart is more your emotions, obviously your memories, your images, visions, dreams. Like, how are you being seen by others? What is your relationship? What kind of image do you have that will get you what you want? And the head types are more observers. They're out of touch with their gut instincts and their emotions, well, in a complex way. They're more scanning the environment and trying to, all in their own ways, they're trying to keep themselves safe from something. They're trying to calm their anxieties by learning and paying attention to patterns, whether that's depending whatever it is that scares them. So for sevens, it would be things that are not fun, things that are boring would make them anxious, or things that are bring up bad feelings would make them anxious, and they'll try and find distractions. Whereas the six is looking for sources of authority and consistency, and the five wants to stand back and think for themselves and put some distance and rationalize whatever it is that's making them anxious. Oh, thank God, because I was rambling.
Sorry. My sister called me from Japan. So my cat Fleur was missing this morning, and I thought she had escaped, but she was in the closet. So.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, that speaks well of you, because interrupting the hangout, because usually they'll say it's rude, but no, you got your priorities right. It was important.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's important to know where your cat is. Yeah. So yeah.
I'll go back.
What were you guys talking about?
I was just rambling. I was just talking about the centers of each Enneagram type, which I still want to see, Ben. So
you want? I'll try and find it again.
I think you passed it.
There it is.
Okay. So yeah. So yeah, as I was saying, there's the three centers. Everyone has all three centers. Everyone uses all three, but your core type will belong to one of these three centers. Now, there's also something called tri-type, which is a newer theory, which was developed by Catherine and David Favre, who are Enneagram teachers with decades of experience. And I'm learning from Catherine Favre right now. Tri-type theory says that you have one core type, but you actually have three types in total. So you have one type from each center. So I am an Enneagram type 1, but my tri-type would be 1, 5, 2 in that order, which is a combination called the mentor. And it's basically someone it's basically a type 1 that is more introverted and also more focused on helping people. Whereas a type 1, 3, 6 would be more extroverted and more focused on achievement and more focused on belonging, or having a stronger sense of having a bit stronger anxiety, and it's called the taskmaster. More focused on doing stuff to distract himself from their anxieties and to fulfill their duties. And there's all kinds of variations. So basically, what I'm saying is, even though there's 9 core types, once you bring up something like tri-type, you get all kinds of really complex combinations, and you see that this is much more than just a simple 9-type system. Another aspect is something called the instinctual variance, which is a separate system, but it's very complementary to the Enneagram, and it's often taught alongside it. The instinctual variants are based on the idea that all animals, including humans, have these certain primal instincts, and in humans they just manifest in more complex ways. So the 3 instincts are your social instinct, your sexual instinct, and your self-preservation instinct. And what's unique about this system is the idea that individuals have particular preferences. So although you have all 3 instincts, you will have a first instinct, which is what you are primarily focused on and what you want out of life. It's also what makes you the most anxious and neurotic when you don't get it, or when his needs aren't being met. Your second instinct would be what you're most comfortable with, or what comes easiest to you, or what you're least bad at. And your third instinct would be it's sometimes called your blind spot. It's kind of more like your hidden agenda. It's the thing you're least concerned about or more concerned with dealing with last. So, for example, I am a social instinct, so my focus is on the social world, which is like belonging, on political stuff, on pop culture, social obligations, the wider world. My second instinct. Sorry?
I was just going to say, it's like, so Jonathan's social instinct, but it doesn't mean he's an extrovert.
Yes, it does not mean I'm an extrovert. Yeah, because some social types are very extroverted and very involved. Other social types are very withdrawn and more social observers, which is why me more hermit-like. My second instinct is self-preservation, which is about survival, health, fitness, resources. Like, do I have enough, or can I minimize my needs?
Jonathan, as you continue with the explanation of the instincts, could you bring in like the positive and negative?
I was going to do that. I was going to do that later.
Okay.
Just slightly more advanced.
Okay.
So yeah, self-preservation is about health, fitness, resources, your job. Do you have your basic needs met? Can you paying the bills? Are you well? All those things. Are you independent? Can you survive on your own? That sort of thing. And the sexual instinct is that drive to merge with another person, which usually it's a lover, but it can be close friends or family or particular people. Or if you can't get that, you can sometimes get out of a cause or an experience, whatever it is. You've got this, it's more than just sex, it's a strong primal instinct to merge with someone or something. And it's about how attractive you are or how repellent you feel. Do you feel that you are pretty, or do you feel that you're ugly? Particularly when you get to the image type, you can see that's more of a 4-ish thing. But basically, are you attracting your favorite, the favorite people in your life, the people you really want, or are you repelling them, or are they enough for you? All those things. So that's a complementary element to the Enneagram. So I said I'm a type 1, but specifically I am a social 1, which is distinct from a self-preservation 1 and a sexual 1. And you can have a social 2 and a self-pres 2 and a sexual 2. Same with 3, same with 4. Yeah. So again, all these different combinations that show that this 9, there's more than just 9 types. There's, once you bring in tri-type and instinctual stackings, then you can get like hundreds of different combinations to show the sheer variety of how much type there is.
Oh, I'll just say something about the maths of, say, tri-type. So there's 27, say, tri-type archetypes. So one would be 1, 2, 5, and you can arrange those numbers in 6 ways. So you can go 1, 2, 5, 1, 5, 2, 2, 1, 5, 2, 5, 1, 5, 1, 2, 5, 2, 1. I think I got that right. And so you've got 27 times 6 for all of the combinations of the tri-types. But usually when you read a tri-type description, it's describing 6 at a time. So for instance, Jonathan's tri-type is 1, 1, 5, 2. But when you read a description of it, it's probably going to be like all 6 combinations of 1, 2, 5. Those, rather than, sometimes you'll get it specifically to it. And when it's talking about that group of 6, they'll call that the tri-type archetype. So basically all 6 combinations is 1, 2, and 5 in is the tri-type archetype. And Jonathan's particular tri-type is 1, 5, 2.
Yeah, I could probably work up a table of tri-type if they haven't been deleted, because that's all. And
when I first got into Enneagram, I still like the graphic because it makes it. Oh, where'd it go? There's always disappearing. Oh, this is something that's interesting. This will maybe a way to help identify the general trends of the Enneagram in the way they talk. So it might help you to the general there. You can see the talking styles types.
Yeah, I'm not going through all that.
Yeah, fair enough. It's just there's lots to it. I'll go back to the wheel, but I like this as a general way to help understand the types. So, for instance, after watching a few of Emily's video, I initially thought 4, but when I saw your video, Emily, about it was the one about sometimes you have to take in like you were talking about being put upon on a job and working 2 jobs and being exhausted. And I thought, oh, that's a bit either 6-ish or self-preservation, or maybe a bit 9-ish. So we could talk about that in future.
I mean, I'm definitely, when we're talking about the variants and stuff like that, my self-preservation is the lowest. I have like almost 0 self-preservation. I mean, I do, but I'm a sexual social self-preservation. I do relate to self-preservation at all. So.
Yeah, I come to think it, I remember that video because it was about, I think your thought process was not letting the people down because you'd committed to them. Right.
Yeah.
That 6 or 9 then.
I think I'm a 9. I think, and I might be wrong about this, I think I'm either a 9-wing 8 or 9-wing 1. But I could be wrong. And I think
wait, sorry, what did you say? 9-wing 8 or 9-wing 4?
9-wing 1.
Yeah, okay, good. Sorry, I'm sorry. Yeah. Well, that's another thing. I didn't talk about the wings. Because if you look at wing theory is a subtype theory where it's the most basic subtype theory in the Enneagram. Basically, the idea is that you borrow from one, each number borrows from the time next to it. So, and we're saying a 9 wing 8 or a 9 wing 1, you can see that 9 is between type A and type 1. You can also have an 8 wing 9 or an 8 wing 7, a 7 wing 8 or a 7 wing 6, 6 wing 7, 6 wing 5, so on. So again, that's other combinations. So type 9 is the peacemaker, it's the mediator. It wants to be peaceful and accommodating. They want their own space. They want to avoid feeling uncomfortable, and they want to avoid conflict, even though they do feel quite strong. They do have reserves of inner strength, but they don't feel comfortable expressing that strength or expressing their anger. So they go along with others to get along with them, and they feel this, like they have this unspoken contract with others that if they go along with you, if they do what you want them to do, or if they see to your needs, you will give them their space to do their own thing. So the difference between a 9 wing 8 and a 9 wing 1 is that a 9 wing 8 has a bit more selfish, but more self-indulgent, more concerned with their own needs, more likely to express their anger aggressively when their own particular needs are being infringed on. The 9 wing 1 is a bit more idealistic, a bit more moralistic, a bit more concerned with peace in a idealistic moral sense, maybe slightly more scolding, Mahatma Gandhi like, but they're both fundamentally 9s, so they're both concerned with peace, and their own peace in particular, and their own harmony in particular, if that makes sense. And again, things like the instincts and the tri-type, Myers-Briggs type, this can all add all kinds of different flavors, but in general, that's what the 9 is about. 9 is also one of the most common Enneagram types. Type 9 and type 6 are considered the two most common. 9 is also, both those types can also have a hard time pinning down what their actual Enneagram type is, or sometimes some Myers-Briggs type, because they're part of what's called the adaptive triad, which means they adapt to the needs of others or those around them. So they're not quite in touch with their sense of self. They're more looking to others to see how they fit in, how they can get their identity from, like, the line between their own identity and their identity of others is a bit more blurred.
I'll just say something. I mean, Kay's there's a bit here where it says simpleton quality for the 9, but that's a little bit wrong. It's more variation. So there's a lot of 9s that can think they're 5s and be as academic as a 5. I think Maria said that she'll research something, usually for somebody else. So.
Well, every time can be academic. Like 5s are kind of like the stereotypical genius academic thing, but not all 5s are necessarily geniuses, and any type can be a genius. Any type can be smart.
In fact, we could go through all of them and sort of like give the reasons why each of the 9 might be academic. I think the 6 does it defensively, doesn't there?
Yes, we can, Ben. Yes, we can, Ben, in a future hangout.
Okay, fair enough, Jonathan. I will defer to you.
So is there any questions for Emma, for you, or whoever?
I don't have any questions. I wonder if anybody has any questions in the comments. A lot of people are watching it and very interested of what you guys have to say. So
yeah, because I'm running out of things to say, and I just don't want to be the only one talking.
Well, I don't know if I don't know if you talked about this when I was away, but would you like to talk about how you got into Enneagram?
Yeah, okay, so basically, like a lot of people got into it through Myers-Briggs. So basically, I'd taken the Myers-Briggs test on and off over the years since I was in my late teens or something. And usually the pattern was I would like it at first, and then I'd see that the descriptions weren't that good, or that I get different results. And I thought, it's not really, there's not a lot to this. But a few years ago, I did it again. I researched it thoroughly for the first time, and I learned about the functions and all these different things, and that explained it a lot better to me. And so I started looking on the internet for forums about it. And when I went on the forums, like Personality Cafe, I saw people's profiles, and it said their Myers-Briggs type, but it also said their Enneagram type or their Socionics type, which was just their Enneagram type was just these weird numbers, and their instincts were just these like 4.5 SOSP. What the hell does that mean? So after I got comfortable learning with Myers-Briggs, I decided to look into Enneagram a bit more. And after taking a couple of tests, I bought some books, and then the test had said I was either 5.4 or 4.5, and I went back and forth with those. But then when I read about Enneagram 1, it completely resonated with so much of how I'd thought ever since I was little. Like as long as I could remember, I had these thoughts that were on this page. And it was like reading my own mind in a book. And so from then, I started watching Ben's videos, and I managed to blab my way into his channel, and then started talking about Enneagram. He was very excited to know that I knew Enneagram, so he could have someone to talk about with it and learn about it. And then eventually, she invited some Enneagram experts on, like Tom Condon and Catherine Favre, and we've got videos in that channel. But yeah, and now I'm taking classes with Catherine Favre to get certified, hopefully eventually. But yeah, so it's really just been a lot of reading and research over the last few years, and learning a lot from doing these videos with Ben and interviewing people and discussing their type and learning things myself, and talking to other people on the internet as well. So yeah, that's my Enneagram story.
Awesome.
Thank you.
What about you, Ben?
I think I was watching a video by EJ R&D, and he was like bring up the numbers, or I was doing a test.
Oh my gosh, I would love to interview him.
Oh
yes, you're Jewel.
Hey Jay, if you're watching this, I would love to interview.
He recently said in the video that he thinks typology is evil now.
I know. Some interesting things. I was watching his channel like years ago when he like started to make that weird transition. Were you guys watching his channel at that time?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like I loved his videos, and then he like made this like awkward, like this very odd transition into like religion and stuff. And now I think he has another channel, right?
Yeah, it's called, in case people want to know, it's called God's Friend.
Yeah.
And the way he describes heaven, it's like ESTP heaven. It's always about doing stuff, like extreme sports in heaven. So, but yeah. I actually got into Socionics because of him, where at the time, the Socionics website, Wikisocion, .org at the time, I think it was, now .net, where it was actually hard to find out the explanation of Model G. No, sorry, not Model G, Model A. Because you type in Model A, you wouldn't actually get the explanation. And Jay said in his video, he did a Socionics video, and then he said, go to Wikisocion and type in functions. And then when you typed in functions, then it gave the explanation of Model A. And then I got into it from there. And you would realize that nearly all of his comparison videos were using Socionics. and he explained that, and he did this series of about 5 Socionics videos, and then he kept going back and forth. So I think I learned about Enneagram. It was part of a combined test with it, but and then I got I've got a book on it, like personality types. But really, I learned from Jonathan. Yeah.
Yeah, I miss Jay when he was doing his typology with you. Yeah, I mean, he really had something good going, I felt like.
Oh yeah. The way you smiled when you thought of him there made me think of NLP, and that's something I'm getting into a little bit at the moment, and that's good for, like, I think you said in your recent video that you want to talk about personal development with the types, and I think I'm trying to use that with NLP. And the next video we're doing with Catherine Favre is pretty much about how she helps helps people who resemble certain types. There's certain like type related issues, and how she helps them with that. So say, how does she usually help with a 9, and what are the usual challenges that the 9 has, and what are the sort of techniques that 9s can use, a sort of a psychological toolkit to feel better and improve themselves, I suppose. But so we could go through it like this sort of like, because a lot of people watching this right now already know their like MBTI theory to like a conversant degree, and and as Jonathan said, we could go over Emily's type in future. This sort of presupposes future hangouts, but that's not a bad thing. If you're okay with that, Emily.
Yes, no, I'd love for you guys to come back on.
So, as you said, so this is all. So, as I say, with the type 2, this is a little bit how I think about things. It's like explaining something in terms of something else that somebody else already knows. So the type 2 there. Those are the types which usually will be 2. Okay, so Jonathan's back in a moment. So I'll just go through this. I'll rely on the graphics to do the work for me. So it's got here, they tend to be all feelers except, but I think he's saying here that the FI DOMs tend not to be 2s because they're so much about their own authenticity rather than, although I think you can get it with, say, ENFP, where they want that acceptance and approval. And with the ENFPs, you have a sort of inner struggle between wanting to be authentic and wanting acceptance and approval.
It's not their own authenticity, it's more their own feelings. That's the point. Whereas type 2 is more about paying attention to other people's feelings and trying to accommodate them and win them over. So ENFPs and ESFPs, because they have strong unconscious extroverted feeling, even though they value FI, they have strong FE. That's a more likely combination. Whereas INFPs are all about their FI, and that kind of gets in the way of having a core 2.
So we can just sort of overviews here. So this would be type 1, and these are Catherine's old graphics for the type 2. And then this is just sort of an overview of their issues. And Jonathan is in a position where, is this graphic a fair enough representation?
You always ask me that. And I always say yes.
Okay, fair enough. Because sometimes you don't like these graphics that much.
Oh, yeah. Well, they're good, but they're kind of simplistic. That's all. Just.
Yeah, well,
I mean, just of all the years we've been doing these videos, and you always bring these graphics up, you always say, so, Jonathan, do you like them? Are these a fair representation?
Yes. Well, I like them. It's color-coded. That could be a little bit color-coded better for me. Like, I would like it if, like, say, the virtues were always in a certain color and more consistent color coding. But just throw it all out there on one graphic to try and understand it. That's what I like.
In general, for the rest of the video, all these things are fine.
Okay.
Okay. That's for Enneagram. If you're showing the Enneagram 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 250, they're all fine.
Okay.
You don't need to ask me every single time.
Okay, Jonathan.
Oi.
I'll just leave it to the moment where you said, "Oh, I don't want that. Put a different on that one. Not very good." I'll leave it in your court.
Hey.
Well, at least we're entertaining Emily. So there's a positive reframe. There's your 2. And there's the 1990s collage. I think that's a 3. Oh dear.
That's a 3.
Yeah, that's the 1990s collage of the 2. Maybe ENFP for this one here.
That's a really weird collage.
Well, what happened was Catherine asked people to send in collages of send in pictures of what they associated with themselves, and basically all the 2s sent in stuff like this, and the 3s sent in their own things, and the 4s and so on. So these are all actually from Enneagram 2s.
So starting with the 1. Starting with the 1. So this is the. So is this fair? I'm not allowed to ask that question. They're all fine. They're all wonderful. So
Yes.
there's the collage for the 1.
Yeah, so you can see things like the angel images, because one's like to see themselves as, angelic or morally pure. So type 1's very much about morality and desire to be right and do the right thing in the right way for the right reasons. Very much about moral responsibility. That doesn't mean that every moralistic person is a type 1, but all type 1s are moralistic in one way or another, or have a strong sense of right and wrong. And more importantly, it's a strong internal sense of right and wrong. It's not. They might refer to outside rules as a kind of touch point, but ultimately they are their own authority. And that contrasts them with other types which are more external focused.
We did an interesting video, one of the really early videos, which was I was trying to get at, because I did a video about his type and his faith, and I was trying to get at how much of an influence was his Catholic faith on his E1 things. So as Jonathan said there, it's like, how much is it separated? How much is it internal? How much is external?
Yeah, basically, type 1s can believe in anything, whatever, but they will try and. Type 1s, especially social ones, can see themselves as representing some higher purpose or higher order or cause, whatever. So, yeah, they may adhere to a religion, or they might have philosophy or politics or whatever. But again, there's a clear defining thing where they get to decide. They feel they have to judge for themselves what the best interpretation is, and they're going fundamentally by their own conscience, their own instincts. So whatever it is they adhere to some extent, it's secondary to their conscience. Like if there's a clash between what they believe and what their gut is telling them is right or wrong, that can be a bit of a problem, and that's where the perfectionism comes in, the desire to strike that fine balance, that perfect balance between the 2. So, yeah, a lot of morality, a lot of perfection. Again, not every perfectionist is the 1 either, but ones are perfectionistic streaks, and also a kind of civilized thing, like civilization. Like you can see the Victorian etiquette picture up in the top left. All that stuff, like refined, elegant in a way. So yeah, that's type 1, and usually type 1s are judging types in the Myers-Briggs sense. So
yeah,
very much It's actually very much, I'd say, more about introverted intuition or introverted sensing, because both those things can give you a sense of how things should be, how things are supposed to be, and trying to live up to that ideal. Whereas something like an INFp or an INTP, they're more subjective. They're more about how they want things to be, or their own subjective values. Like, there's no real sense of gut instinct to the degree that type 1 has. So that's why type 1s are usually the J types.
There we go. We've done the. Oh yeah, there's some info on the top. No, not quite looked at that. We've been to that graphic. But if folks want to pause the screen, then they can take in the.
So, Ben, where exactly are you going with this? Because you kind of switched topics like 2 or 3 times now.
Well, I just thought that you said
as usual.
As usual, but you sort of said, "Oh, I don't know what to say anymore." So yeah. I thought we'd go through each Enneagram type, an overview of each.
Okay,
type.
I'm just making sure that's what we're doing, because a moment ago you were actually going through the Myers-Briggs combinations, and then you switched to this. And
well, it depends how you want to do it. I mean,
yeah, I'm quite happy to go through the types. I think that's more important.
Yeah, let me go through the type. Yeah.
Okay, so collages, I suppose.
Have we done the? So we've not gone through. Do you want to do the collages? Do you want to?
Yeah.
Okay. We've done the type 2, I think.
Well, you can talk about it.
Go on then.
Yes, type 2 is. By the way, we're totally stealing all of these from Catherine Favre, so this channel may get sued. Just saying. It probably won't get sued, but just in case. Yes, a lot of bright colors, a lot of romantic images, accommodation, advice, pride. There's a pride, and type 2s want to be helped, but there's a pride in being the one who helps. Like, if it's not always enough. Healthy 2s are happy that someone's being helped, but the less healthy they get, the more they want to be the one who helps you, and the more they want to be appreciated for helping you. Like an attention-seeking sort of help, kind of sometimes intrusiveness when they're less healthy, and a kind of militant quality, which is what that angry woman in the bottom left-hand corner is about. Kind of a lot of color, a lot of romance. As I said, they have a sense of responsibility, and they usually see themselves as good people, and generous people and charitable people, and very much giving people. In their own mind, they're giving people without any expectation of getting something back. But down the line, if they feel stressed or they feel unappreciated, they might start saying, "Think of all I've done for you. Don't you owe me something?" Like a strategy of giving to get, and a strategy of I've helped you, so I think it's just fair and reasonable that you should tell me back.
Do you think, Jonathan, that a lot of MBTI types with E and F in the MBTI code?
Yes. Yeah, but also a lot of ISFJs as well, and probably some INFJs, but usually, stereotypically, this is probably stereotypically ENFJs and ESFJs are probably the most likely to be 2, and very often have 2 there. ENFPs and ESFPs less so, but still, it's not unusual. ISFJs and sometimes INFJs, like I said.
And that's one of the. Yeah, I'll just say that's one of the great things about Enneagram that sort of goes beyond the stereotype, because people tend to think of the ESFP as a bit of a selfish showboating type. But when you have the 2 there, it's like, wow, that's a different side to the ESFP.
Yeah,
with the 2.
The 2 can be selfish and showboating in their own right, but still the generosity and the charity when they're healthy.
Well, and I also don't find ESFPs to be that selfish, typically. I mean, it would make sense why you think that, Ben, but
Yeah, but I've done loads of hangouts with Jeff. So Mike, as someone who represents my conflictor, and with him, he would say it's an instinct helping other people.
Yeah, that's ESFP spaz or SP spaz. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does he still make videos, or is it just all on your channel now?
Yeah. He's pretty much. He's going to make in future. He's going to make a big comeback, and when that happens, you'll know why there's been a delay.
Oh, I see.
He's going to make an impressive comeback, and he'll look rather different.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Ooh,
yes. There we go.
So yeah, that's type 2.
Right then. Which is code for move on, Ben. Right. So type 3.
Yeah, so type 3 has the image of wanting to be successful. So most type 3s will say they do generally want substance to their success. They want to be genuinely successful. But in particular, they want to be seen as successful. It's not enough to be successful. They have to be noticed, because that's how they know they're doing well. That's how they have a sense of guidance in life, getting positive feedback from others that they are making it. So, like someone who wants to know that they're getting good grades, or someone who wants a nod from their boss, or wants that promotion, or wants the big paycheck, whatever, or wants the brands, the successful brands, the expensive brands. All those things are very 3-ish. Another side to the 3, though, is efficiency and a desire to get results and hard work and success, because some 3s are more focused on the attention-seeking side. Other 3s, the 3-wing-2 is usually more focused on the attention-seeking side, whereas the 3-wing-4 is a bit more focused on the professional side, the efficiency, the hard worker, the one who does what needs to be done. Sometimes in a coldly efficient and ruthless way. The least healthy 3s are the textbook narcissists, sometimes psychopaths. Those are pretty extreme, of course, but there can be a sort of coldness and lack of empathy and a chameleon-like quality, knowing how to fit in and how to look good and look successful to others, helping people and being more aware of doing it for selfish reasons than the 2 does, wanting praise and adoration. For instance, some 3s will say that the reason they brag, these are known to brag, and if they brag, it's often because they want praise from others, and if they can't get it from others, they'll give it to themselves. So the sort of person who looks in the mirror and says, "You're doing good, you're awesome, you've got it, you're making it, you're doing well." That kind of encouragement.
And I think when they're younger, the 3s that are in their early 20s, and it's like they're just trying to impress people. So it's a little bit of an insecurity.
Yeah,
it's sort of, I cut a little bit of slack.
Yeah, it's just kind of like if they're not doing this, they feel shame, they feel anxious sometimes. It's sort of like they really do need to have this from others to some point. Obviously, the healthier they get, the less they need it, but there's still going to be that bit there. 3s are usually extroverts, and they can be feeling types, but they're often thinking types. So ESTPs, ENTJs, ESTJs, maybe ENFJs, ENFPs, ESFPs, whatever. But very much sort of person who wants to fit in with the group or fit in with others, doesn't like necessarily being on their own for very long, but they can get anxious if they're just sitting at home by themselves doing nothing. They need to be doing something. All of these are described not as human beings, but as human doings. They'll identify very strongly with their work or their job. I am what I do. If they're not doing something, they're not happy. They're not focused. They can have periods of being very lazy, but those are usually when they're stressed or anxious or unhealthy or not doing well, or maybe they are doing well in the sense that they're doing their job and so on, but they're not getting noticed or rewarded for it. Or they're not getting the specific type of feedback that they want, which can depend on their instinct or their tri-type, whatever. So you see you see James Bond down there, that sharp professional image. A lot of spies are actually archetypal type 3s, being able to perform, be able to fit in, create a good impression, and leave. And you see the person with the mask up in the right hand corner. That's very much how the 3 is. They are who they are when they're wearing a mask, when they're pretending to be someone else. When they're not performing, they don't feel like they are themselves. They feel more empty very often.
Somebody just asked Jonathan in the chat. They just wrote, he sounds Scottish.
I was about to say that too.
I was wondering why Emma was smiling.
Yeah, he is Scottish.
I think in one hangout, Jonathan said that some Scottish people can't understand him either. But I find that hard.
I've been to Scotland before.
Oh, really?
Ooh, I haven't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Jonathan, Emily's done a video of her visiting England and having, as she describes, British candies. And I was watching the video, I was saying, try the chocolate. Usually the Americans love the British chocolate.
But the thing is, okay, Ben, I've grown up with British candies. So those are like the weird candies that I've tried. British chocolate. I love Cadbury. I love like all kinds of British chocolate. I've tried, like I've had that, like I've had buttons. I've had, all kinds of things growing up because my Nana's British.
Uh-huh.
So I was just trying things that my sister and I have never tried before.
No.
Right.
So wait a minute, Ben, you've never been to Scotland, but you talk about Glasgow all the time. Like,
well, because I've seen Taggart.
Yeah, you've seen
Nesbitt.
Yeah, so that's just stereotyping right there.
Then you have no excuse for not going to Scotland. You're like right there.
In American terms, I'm right there, but in British terms, it's not next door.
It's not. It's not this. It's not that he hasn't been to Scotland. His problem is that he hasn't been to Scotland, but he's scared of Scotland, or he's scared of Glasgow specifically, because he's seen all these TV shows that make it sound intimidating and scary. And I'm.
Oh, okay. How far away is Scotland from England?
Well, Scotland is on the border with England, so it depends what you.
So it can be an inch away.
Ben,
hours away.
Yeah.
Ben's probably a few hours away.
Yeah. Okay. I'm in the middle of England.
Well, I guess it's just a different perspective because in the US, like I drive 8 hours and that's like not that bad.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, I would take that.
Yeah, Jonathan does not want me visiting him.
Yeah, I don't want anyone. I don't want anyone visiting him. Like I get my visiting me. Like when my parents come around, I give them funny looks. Like I love you, but when are you going?
You love them more when they're at a distance.
Yeah. This is my space. This is my home.
I like the idea of the levels, and I've sort of joked with Jonathan that, he doesn't like them that much, so why don't you come up with your own version, the Campbell levels? And maybe he'll in future.
Yeah, I didn't mention that there are health levels to each Enneagram type, and it's not that I don't like these levels, just that they're very deep, but they're very specific, so they're not the best.
What about the way he? We'll go to the 4. These are some ideas. What about when we? Oh, that's something. The 4 here. What about in the wisdom of the Enneagram, where it's less dependent on a single word and everyone having the same idea of the meaning of that word, and it explains it in terms of paragraphs for each level. Is that better?
I can't remember when I've last read that book, so I need to read it myself.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway,
over to the 4.
Right, type 4 is a more introverted type, a more feeling type. Very often INFPs, ISFPs, INFJs. They are the most emotional Enneagram. Well, they're not necessarily the most emotional Enneagram type, but the type that's often most concerned with emotions and their own emotions specifically, and with authenticity. They'll see them. They won't necessarily be authentic, but they'll appreciate authenticity or what they think is authenticity in themselves or others. This is very often the sort of person who wants to be authentic, but ends up presenting an image. There's a sense of, I am flawed and defective, therefore unique and special. Like a sense of woe is me, a sense of I want to be seen for who I truly am, but I also want to be seen as unique and different from the others. So some of a contradiction there.
Especially when they join a Facebook group full of other fours and talk about how similar they are.
Yeah. I'm sure Ben's not thinking of any group in particular. Yeah, so I've talked about the difference between the 2, 3, and the 4. They're all part of the heart triad. They're all about their emotions. The 2 tends to focus more on their positive emotions, more on things like love and happiness and optimism and so on. The 3 suppresses their emotions. The 3 is out of touch with their emotions and in order to focus on being successful and doing a job well done and so on. That's why you'll never. That's why it's very unlikely you'll get something like an INFP type 3, because that's totally contradicting the need to be out of touch with your feelings. Type 4, however, is very much about their emotions and very much, although they talk about authentic emotions, very often it's the negative emotions that they focus on and tend to romanticize a bit. The sadness, the shame, anger sometimes, especially with the sexual 4.
And again, these are type 4s that Catherine has known, and they chose these images. These are the images that spoke to them.
Yes. Melodrama, like a melodramatic sense of your emotions. Some dress quite normally and conservatively, but others can dress quite uniquely, always put on something to make them distinguished from themselves. So, well, 3s would be looking for the brands, the 4s are looking for something more unique, more to do with something that expresses their emotions or something rare or unusual, an unusual piece of jewelry, or they'll throw on a scarf or a hat or whatever just to accessorize and stand out.
Yes. So if
they see someone wearing the same type of thing they are, they can feel very ashamed or envious and just throw it away and try and find something else.
So, because I look at Enneagram a lot more simplistically than Jonathan, because he knows more than me. So a couple of themes I noticed with the 4 are either creativity or style. So it's almost as if and they can also be, when I see their sense of style, their sense of the. It's almost like when you see an art critic.
Oh yeah.
And it's almost like the art critic thinks they're better than the artist because they have better artistic sensibilities. That
can happen, yes. So all 4s will either be artists or art critics, or they'll have some artistic sensibilities. They'll have an interest in, even if it's not their job, they will still likely have some interest in art or music or film or poetry or philosophy, well, something creative. And you'll see a lot of, stereotypically, you'll see a lot of dark colours, a lot of black and blue and red and purple.
Yeah.
Although, as I said, actual 4s can sometimes dress perfectly normally, but have this sort of side to them.
Oh, a couple of examples. I think David Bowie, Prince, Johnny Depp is usually cited as a 4, but I would definitely say Prince and David Bowie, where certainly David Bowie always tried to be different.
Yeah, a lot of actors are 4s. Well, actors can be any type, of course, but 4s are almost stereotypical actors, and all singers are 4s, and so on.
Should I move on, Jonathan?
I was going to say something, but
Go on then.
Another thing, both 2s and 4s can be good therapists or have therapeutic sensibilities. The 2, however, will focus more on what the person is actually feeling and how to help them. The 4 can sometimes more focus on the person getting in touch with their feelings and being in touch with their raw emotions and authenticating them and validating them. And perhaps sometimes projecting their own feelings onto whoever they're trying to help. So I've heard some 4s discuss the term empathic because they're often described as empathic, but they don't necessarily relate to it because of this conflict between having a good understanding of emotions, and particularly the darker side of emotions, but also sometimes getting too wrapped up in their own emotions to truly empathize with others. So a healthy 4 is obviously quite empathic, but a less healthy 4 can think they're empathic or talk a lot about empathy, when in reality they're very self-absorbed.
Are they usually introverted, the 4s?
Oh yeah, all 4s will be introverted or introverted. Like even if they were like an ENFp or an ENFJ, they would be slightly more introverted in some sense.
There's a little bit of overlap with the NF.
And a lot
with authentic, benevolent, empathic being the keywords for NFs.
Yeah, and I think a lot of NFs might sometimes mistype as a 4 on Enneagram tests just because they're NFs, especially the INFs. Although plenty of INFs will be 4s.
Yeah, and frequently an NF person will have, like, not always, but frequently like a 4 fix in their tri-type, especially if they're like an INF type.
Not always, but often.
Not always. Just general trends.
Yeah, probably the INFp is the most likely to have 4 in their tri-type period.
Because of just the nature of subjective feeling and what it is. That's
right. You can also think of Phantom of the Opera sort of 4 as well, like the mad genius.
So these are the levels in, like, these are the core dynamics which sort of blow people's minds when they see like B terms and A terms. So that's attitudes and behaviors. So make things a lot easier. I think this is David further there. So this is what it's like in Wisdom of the Enneagram. So it's sort of a little bit more user friendly, and these are examples of the levels of the 4. Any good, Jonathan?
They're good enough.
Jonathan said something interesting where he said like the average ones are really unhealthy. The unhealthy ones are psychos.
Yeah, kind of, because that was because people were talking like about Donald Trump and so on, other types, like basically the health levels for all the types are described as healthy, average, or unhealthy. But when you look at the actual details, the average levels can sometimes be very unhealthy in personality disorders, whereas the unhealthy levels are really like self-destructive or interpersonally violent and so on, like crazies. But yeah, we're kind of getting off topic there again.
Yeah. I'll just say that there's a little bit of a warning out there for the 4s that read the sexual 4 description. It's a little bit biased because Naranjo based it on an ex-girlfriend who threw all of his clothes out of a hotel window and left him naked. So a little bit biased in the sexual 4. So it's not. So don't get too upset if you read about it and it looks like borderline personality disorder. So it's a little bit of a biased profile there.
Well, the sexual instinct is very much an unhealthy. Borderline personality disorder is very much about an unhealthy sexual instinct. If you understand that disorder, it's very strong overlap. So Yeah, a lot of unhealthy sexual 4s or sexual 2s or 6 whatever will meet the criteria for borderline personality disorder. That's just a little tidbit.
No. Yeah, and we hope to do a video on that in future. The Enneagram and the DSM. When did you get? I think you got into the DSM first, didn't you, Jonathan? In your typology journey, or
Well,
you got into it before Enneagram?
Before my typology journey, I think we've actually done a DSM video before, like in the very early days.
Yeah, it was a bit rambly though. It's like 4 hours, and like the first 40 minutes was just.
Yeah. Anyway, Enneagram 5. So.
Oh yeah, I'll just say one thing. So this is like the NT is. You not always, but the NT traits of like wanting the expertise and the ingenuity and things like that. Back to Jonathan.
Yeah. So, type 5 is part of the head triad. It's about, as I said, the head triad. The head center is about anxiety and how you deal with it. The 5 specifically is anxious about the outer world and their ability to engage with it. So the 5 withdraws from the outer world to manage their anxiety and is seeking to master a subject or a subject to become an expert in a certain field, at least one field, pardon me, in order to gain the confidence to engage with the world and go after whatever it is they think they need as dictated by their instinct. So very much a person who values their own mind and their ability to think for themselves and their ability to gather knowledge and become masters of a given area. Usually this is going to be an intellectual area and something abstract. It can sometimes be more grounded, pragmatic, but whatever it is, it's about knowledge is power, and it's about security through knowledge. A real sense that they are looking up at the world and they're trying to find it big and intimidating, but they can feel comfortable engaging it once they have knowledge. They are. No, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say that it's not just the INTs that you can get the. It's pretty much all thinking introverts will have this quality to them. So even ISTJ and ISTP as well, because it's about mastery.
Well, those are ISTJs and INTPs are usually 6-ish, but that's another. That's a complex thing.
You know what I mean? It's not necessarily academic, so it's like the ISTJs and the ISTPs.
It's not necessarily. Yeah, and some extroverted thinking type, particularly the ENTP and possibly the ENTJ, or variations of those types might be 5s, but very much a thinking type, because another aspect of 5 is someone who's not very in touch with their own emotions, or someone who feels very overwhelmed by emotions and by other people, by their own emotions and by other people's emotions. There's a sense of detachment, a sense of an observer, and someone who likes to keep their feelings out of the equation whenever they can. And sometimes has trouble engaging with their feelings or understanding feelings, except perhaps from an intellectual perspective, if that. Some 5s are more emotional than others, or more interested in emotions than others, and that depends on things like wing and tri-type and stuff. But overall, there's still a sense of someone who is observing, so on. So even though a lot of INFJs will get 5 on tests, that's very often just because they're introverts and they're intuitives. It's not necessarily because they're actually 5s, or they can have in their tri-type. It's more often just because of the introversion, because 5 is always introverted. It's probably, as a slightly controversial statement, I think, because a lot of INFJs will identify as 5s, but very often that's a common mistype, I find.
Jonathan, could you talk about the how they relate to emotion, and how, because frequently you get a lot of INF types will get 5 on an Enneagram test results. So your thoughts on that, please?
I just said that.
Oh. But did you actually talk about the way they actually like cut it off and like don't really want to, and the way they think about it?
Yeah, 5s are emotionally detached by default.
Right.
They're again, some 5s will be more emotional than others. probably the sexual 5 is the most emotional, but still a sense of detached observer, a sense of independent learner, someone who's trying to learn and be objective in order to manage their own anxieties and gain confidence. So someone identifies as intelligent and clever, learned, and when they're less healthy, usually when they're less healthy, when they're under stress, they'll become more anxious, and the more anxious they get, the more anxious they get about their mind, and they'll start to feel stupid and they project it onto others. So less healthy fives will often be the type who's calling others stupid or challenging people's intellectual understanding in order to, basically what they're trying to do is reassert that, okay, at least I'm smarter than you, at least I'm smarter than these other people who do not have the answers. That's sort of, they can get that from debating, they can get that from outsmarting people, they can get that from attacking other people's philosophies or beliefs. This is, again, the less healthy side of 5.
I'll just say about the INF types and how they can relate to 5. So INFJ, so Emily knows about, so you know about the benefit relationships, because you've mentioned that, but there's a thing in Socionics where you can have the INFJ have a beneficiary shift to INTP. So INFJs can act INTP-ish. They can have their modes where they go into like an INTP mode, and they can sort of identify with certain parts of the 5. And it can frequently be in the tri-type. So, for instance, Jonathan's tri-type, E152. So there's a strong 5-ish element in there.
Sorry, I have to take care of this fight.
Okay. Fighting like cats and dogs. Well, what's your thoughts about?
Basically, in Myers-Briggs terms, is very much TI and NI especially.
Yeah.
Basically, but yeah, a lot of INFJs will identify as 5s if they're in touch with their introverted thinking.
Do you it could also be as a sort of a INFJ can have a problem with extroverted thinking, and so maybe they can get, and this just coming up with this right now, maybe they can get a little bit 5-ish in terms of like researching how they might do something, sort of thinking about it intellectually in terms of like as a way to compensate for the poor TE, but also as a way to procrastinate as well.
Well, yeah. But yeah, the essence of it is someone independent thinking, intelligent, self-learner, emotionally detached. The 5-wing 4 is more of a, stereotypically, it's more of the artistic, or someone who wants to be an expert in the arts or the humanities, or so on in the intellectual sense. 5-wing 6 is more of the business, science, hard science sort of thing, more scientifically inclined, more skeptical. But you will find exceptions. Like you will find 5-wing 6s who are writers or who are involved in the art in some way. Leonardo da Vinci is a good example, or Isaac Asimov. And you will find 5-wing 4s who are more artistically inclined, but who are involved in science. So that's one of those are the wing descriptions that bother me the most, because in practice a lot of people get a bit confused there. That's a tidbit.
I also say that INFPs as well can be very intellectual, because you've got the I and the N there, and there's a strong sort of unvalued function. TI, because they're still a bit there. So with the I and the N, basically they're subjective evaluators, so they're always judging things on a subjective level. So they're going to switch between the FI and the TI. It's just that their TI is filtered through the FI. And so when an INTP looks at an INFP, they can sort of say, well, it looks like your thinking there is slightly compromised by your principles. But that's not necessarily the case, but that's how INTPs can think.
Oh, one last thing I forgot to talk about was the miserliness of the 5, which is more. That's again the sense that they only have so much emotions to give, and they have so much stuff to give, and so they're very miserly with it. They're very protective of what they have, and they can very often try and minimize their needs to get by in as little as possible for as long as possible.
They're also miserly with their time as well.
And their time. Yes, and their time and their space. It's related. This is very much someone who needs their own time more than most types.
And I suppose stereotypically, it's like they'll be analysing something. Are you worth giving up time that I could be spent reading
or thinking,
rather than talking to you?
Reading or thinking or abstracting or whatever. So even if you're an introvert who is not 5-ish is less introverted than an introvert who is 5-ish.
And this is just a quick example of a tri-type, some tri-type description. So these are both 5, but you get these slight variations within them. So you can get it. We'll talk about that in future. There you go, some of the keywords. And I think Catherine put these keywords on here based on feedback as well. And sort of like asking the 5s what they think of these words. So her approach is quite empirical. But yeah, I mean, if anyone is pretty happy with their typing of INTP, check out 5. If they're EP, check out 7. So there's certain ones they should sort of check out first to see whether it's a good fit. There's some instinctual variations on the 5. Oh yeah, the sexual 5 can be quite 4-ish. Especially if the 514 as well. Right, there you go. The most complicated one to describe, the 6.
Well, it's the most complicated, but it's actually the most common as well. 6 is the most. 6 is probably the most common personality type. It's also the type that pretty much any Myers-Briggs type can be. It's very commonly reported. So the 5 is anxious about the outer world. The 7 is anxious about the inner world. The 6, however, is just anxious. Their wing can affect what they're more anxious about, but there's still just a sense that they are anxious all the time to some various degrees. So the amount of stress they're under can affect how anxious they get. But this is someone who's just anxious, and then they're anxious that they are anxious. There's a sense that they're unsure, skeptical, they're doubtful. They're out of touch with their, more than most, they're out of touch with their gut center, which means they're out of touch with their sense of inner strength and convictions and their sense of knowing what to do or knowing what to think. And so an underlying uncertainty, and so a sense that they need to look to outside authorities or to consistency in their environment to figure out how to deal with life. Almost always, most SJs in Myers-Briggs will have 6 in their tri-type. And there's a bit of overlap with some of the older 6 descriptions and the older SJ descriptions as far as wanting to be conventional, having an orientation towards authority and order and so on. But this isn't necessarily someone who likes order, it's someone who fears chaos, it's someone who wants consistency in their environment because they can't find it in themselves, so they're overcompensating. And consistency from others because they can't find it themselves. So let's spend hours and hours just talking about the 6 because there's so many variations, because they're so much shaped by their environment, so reacting to their environment.
When it comes to, when we do talk about the variants of this, could we like give an example for like each of the instinctual variants, because it can vary so much by variant.
Yeah, but even those, there's variants within the variants as well. So
right, okay.
Yeah. So
a future hangout.
Yeah.
On it.
There's so many future hangouts just coming from this hangout.
Yeah.
So yeah, someone who's.
Oh, have you talked about the counterphobic aspect?
I wasn't finished. I was back to the
sorry. I apologise. We get this banter between Jonathan and I, this friendly rivalry, for no reason at all, based on my errors. Go on, Jonathan. Do you want to go back to the collage?
Yes, please. Yeah, okay, so keywords with the six: skeptical, loyal, suspicious, security focused. Basically, the six, they're coming at the world as anxious, and they're coming at the world with the sense that there's a sense of danger outside themselves, and they want to identify it, and they're looking for. Over time, they learn to look for and track consistency in the environment and in others, and from there they can decide, okay, what's safe and what's dangerous, what's reliable, what's not reliable, who's not reliable, and so on. And this is where they start identifying certain people or certain things as safe and then attaching themselves to them, and dangerous and avoiding them. Or if they're counterphobic, if they're going against their fears, they might be attracted to the danger and repelled by the safety, because the safety can make you lower your guard. Very much someone who sees subconsciously, they can see the world as kind of unsafe or dangerous, and therefore looks to others, looks to friends or family or ideologies or religions or whatever to band together for security with, to have a sense of unity and to fit in with in return for being safe. So also someone who can play devil's advocate a lot, someone who is not sure of what to think or how they're supposed to think, and so challenges people in order to find out where they stand, or to force them to take a position, or to see how they react to things, to see if they're trustworthy or not, or if they're getting anxious about their own position, they may try and challenge us to validate that. It's usually it's often someone who says they don't know. Well, I was going to say it's someone who says that they don't know what to think, but they know how they feel. But that can be a bit more complicated when you factor in Myers-Briggs. But generally, someone who's constantly overanalyzing, overthinking things, and as such is looking for others to be their anchor, like their touchstone. Someone's got a lot of doubt and is looking for something to quell that doubt. Like, I can trust this, and can rely on this. So they very often, no matter how intelligent they are, even if they have PhDs or whatever, they very often don't necessarily see themselves as the expert. They see themselves as trusting the expert, or relying on the experts, or relying on the evidence, or the studies, or the results, whatever, or their Bible, or whatever it is. Just something that says, I can rely on this, I can trust this. Yeah, they could also be, if they're more phobic, then they'll try and avoid danger. They'll try and avoid what makes them anxious. They'll run away from what scares them or what seems to threaten them. They're more passive aggressive. They'll have to be a bit more pro-authority, because authority is there to keep order and keep them safe. And the rules are there to keep you safe, and if you don't follow the rules, or if other people don't follow the rules, then they're putting everyone in danger. If they're more counterphobic, they'll be more rebellious, more challenging authority. They'll may have bad experiences with authority in the past and see authority as unsafe. They do not feel brave, but they feel like they have to act brave in order to overcome their fears and survive. The person kind of gets very aggressive and picks himself up in order to frighten off enemies and frighten off dangers. Someone who kind of knee-jerk reactions against authority is someone who perhaps feels safest when they're not safe. Someone, counterphobic sixes can feel like, if I'm safe for a long period of time, then I'll let my guard down. When I let my guard down, I will be attacked. That's when I'm most vulnerable. So counterphobic sixes can sometimes deliberately put themselves in dangerous situations or extreme situations, right, in order to be alert.
Vladimir Putin going in a cage, stroking a big cat, and I mean like a fearsome cat.
In front of cameras, though, he did that.
Yeah.
Vladimir Putin's more of a hybrid type. He's got counterphobic and phobic traits.
Yeah. Yeah, you see his eyes. Lots of fear in his eyes. Right, so should I move on, Jonathan?
Yeah. I think Emma's getting slightly bored.
No, I'm not.
There's a card.
It's little florist. This is Fleur. I don't know.
Oh, okay. Oh. Yes.
Right, yeah, I need to there's the variants and then 7.
Yeah, so 7's usually the ENFPs, ESTPs, ESFPs, and the other one, which I didn't say. The EPs. They're the type 7s are anxious about their inner world, so they're allergic to anxiety. They don't like being anxious. They like to distract themselves from anxiety, so they're more extroverted, they're more outgoing, or maybe they're not necessarily outgoing, but they're extroverted towards books or games or hobbies or areas of interest. Whatever it is, they'll do something else. They'll do things outside themselves to distract themselves from their anxiety and to distract themselves from things that bother them and to distract themselves from the darker side of life. They can deal with the darker side of life in small doses or for limited moments. So if you're dealing with a 6, if you're dealing with a 7 and you need to touch on the darker stuff, you can tell them that, okay, we're going to this dark place, but only for a few minutes. Once we're just, that's how they deal with it. Otherwise, if they don't see a way out, they'll just run away. Or they'll fight you and get more aggressive. This is very often, this can be someone with a bit of a selfish streak who doesn't necessarily empathise with needs that are not their own, especially if they're, or even if there's the social 7. But at the same time, they do generally want others to enjoy themselves and have fun, and they're often the person with the big exciting idea they want you to get involved in. Kind of a bit more flamboyant at times. Escapists, that's the main thing. They're trying to escape from their anxieties and do things that are interesting and exciting. And because of that, they can find things that are boring quite anxious, because if things are boring, then they're not being distracted, and if they're not being distracted, then they're going to get anxious again. So yeah, this can, what it is that interests them, what excites them, can depend on the Myers-Briggs type. So the ENFP will be more, fantasy or video games. Well, all video games, all other video games. The ENTP might be more scientifically inclined sometimes. You might find science interesting. I suppose some ENFPs can as well. ESTP is perhaps more sporty. ESFP is maybe more stereotypical shopping or fashion or so on, but or parties, whatever it is. As long as it's fun and interesting and exciting right, or not boring, that's what makes it.
Yeah, I'll say just for an example, Jeff Muller, ESFP, but his actions will not be stereotypically 7, but it's like that's what he would prefer to do. It's just that the opportunity doesn't come into being.
Yeah, it's also someone who just fears being trapped and fears being tied down, but there's a part of them that does want that. There's a part of them that wants the odd stability as long as it won't make them anxious, because if they're too 7-ish, they can end up getting in trouble, leading very chaotic lives that don't go anywhere. As far as learning goes, it's often someone who prefers to learn a lot of things about a little, who prefers breadth of knowledge to depth, although they can benefit a lot from going deep, but that's something they're doing when they develop. Their natural instinct is to, as far as reading goes, the natural instinct is to read things like shorter books, or things that they can get through quite fast, or read short, or watch shorter shows and so on. Like there's a speediness to it. There's a kind of hedonism to it.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking for like comic book versions of like typology books. So it's literally pains.
Yeah. Comic books in general are archetypal with 7-ish. Like, there's a lot of obviously there's a lot of variation to actual comic books, but generally a lot of comic books are a great example of a 7-ish mentality.
What I sort of mean by that is something like this. Like, this is the book like Understanding Comics, but I just like the format of it, where it goes along into the art thing. I was just wondering, can't more books be like this with lots of pictures and still lots of depth, but going into things like that. Anyway. So the 7s might, like the Enneagram, made easy, lots of images in that.
I think by the time I get to the 7, when I'm discussing all the Enneagram types, I'm starting to get a bit tired. So I just hope the 7s I just hope the 7s aren't bored by me by now. Right, so there, if people want to pause that, there you go. I identify with most of this, but not. Was it narcissist? No, don't do that. But lacking discipline. Well, you know, narcissists don't always see themselves as narcissists. Spin. Just saying.
All right then.
Also, suggestibility. They can be a bit suggestible. They can also be very inspirational. Like a person who inspires you and encourages you to do something exciting or interesting.
This very much fit. Of all the EPs, this leans most towards ENTP. Now, when you read some of the descriptions of the 7, it will seem, some of them might seem a little bit more sensorish, a little bit more like ESFP and ESTP, whereas this particular one is a little bit more ENTP-ish. Because you've got sort of like loyalty of a snake down here.
Well, that's the less healthy thing. But they're also idealistic and future-oriented. They're always looking for the next exciting thing to do. Yeah. So eights are usually ESTP, ENTJ, ESTJ, sometimes ENFP or ENTP. Usually extroverts, usually tough, assertive people, but not necessarily the person who is loud and aggressive, not the person who's acting tough because they're secretly afraid or insecure. This is the person who does not feel afraid, period, or hardly ever feels afraid except in extreme circumstances. It's the person who's genuinely out of touch with their fear and who genuinely feels quite tough and powerful and likes to feel tough and powerful, strong, who is capable of making tough choices and hard decisions, is capable of standing up for themselves, who feels very responsible for their own life, and perhaps feels that other people should be responsible for their own life as well. There's a kind of a dynamic between a predator and a protector to them. There's a part of them that can be a bit predatory, that kind of goes after what they want and doesn't see why they shouldn't have it. Just a matter of what take have thing. But there's also the side to them that's protective, that wants to look after the weak and the vulnerable. Sometimes they'll do that by perhaps bullying them a bit and trying to get them to toughen up. But most days will say they don't like bullies, that they're against bullies, that they are not the bully, even though other people might see them as too much and coming on too strong. Someone who doesn't necessarily like to apologize much. Someone who is very concerned with justice, although justice can be revenge. And with eights and revenge, it's more like they have the sense that they're complete masters of their own destiny, that they're in charge of their own world. And so if someone wrongs them and they don't do something about it, they're basically giving that person permission to wrong them again in the future, or say that was okay. And so they need to take revenge, they need to take justice in order to correct that, in order to put everyone in their place and make sure that they feel in charge again. someone who someone who's authentic as well. Someone who's more than the four. The four might talk all about authenticity, but the 8 is the most authentic type in terms of telling it like it is, expressing their own opinion, generally not mincing words. They're perhaps not quite as authentic as they like to think. They're not necessarily saying things that are true, but they're saying things that are honest. They're saying how they feel. They can be huge liars as well, but there's even a certain honesty to their lying, if that makes sense. Like an exaggeration often. But more than most, this is, compared to all the other types, this is the most authentic type. Not perfectly authentic, but more authentic than most.
What I can say about that is, like, say ESTP, where they will see people around them who are moralistic, but they'll see that they're not consistent totally. And so the ESTP is not very good at seeing why there might be exceptions to certain moral principles. And so they will see that as hypocritical when it's not consistent. And so it's that is what Jonathan, I think, means by that's part of it.
That's part of it. But also, on the flip side, they may not see how they're hypocritical in their own way, how they're inconsistent in their own respect.
Right. What I'll say about that is, when the ESTP, they might figure, well, that's what I thought at the time. The situations have changed. That was then, this is now.
Yeah, but you can see how even that is a little bit hypocritical in terms of why is it okay for other people to be inconsistent but not them, or vice versa.
Well,
yeah, but kind of. The player is tough, powerful, strong-minded, often fearless. Kind of not the person who acts very angry because they're afraid, but the person who says, okay, do you want to rethink what you just said before I destroy you, sort of thing. I was going to say something there and I can't remember what it was. Yeah, as part of because they're part of the anger center, they have easy access to anger most. They just don't necessarily like being angry, but they're okay with it. They don't mind it. They can recognize there is a problem if they're angry all the time, if they don't control their anger. But generally, they see anger as a tool that they use to get things done, and they'll see anger as when people are authentic. Like if someone gets angry, that's how they really feel, which isn't necessarily true, but it's how they feel about their own anger, and they project that onto others.
I'll just say something about, now this one is based on the Naranjo 8, and the Naranjo 8 is very ESTP. So it's got their sensory motor dominance. So if you read some 8 descriptions, it's like, how can an ENTJ or ESTJ be this? So, but say in Catherine Farber's descriptions of the 8, then you can see how other types, usually seen as in charge, can like be pretty 8-ish. So ESTJ from the SJs, ESTP from the SPs, and what's the other one? ENTJ from the NTs. And when Jonathan said there before about ENTPs and ENFPs being 8-ish, I tend to disagree with that, but I would say that it can come through in that ENTPs and ENFPs are very much about their freedom, and so if you try to control them, then their sort of assertiveness will come through. But I don't think ENTPs and ENFPs are about controlling other people. They're about other people not wanting to control them so they can do what they want to do. That's how I personally see.
Yes, very much that sort of thing. They can want to control us, but they definitely want to control themselves and not be controlled.
You see, the reason I mentioned that is that in the Socionics profiles of ENFP and ENTP, when it gets to, say, the role function of SE, it's about them not being cramped, and that if you challenge them, they will fight back and stand up for themselves.
Yeah.
But you see, part of the reason I would think for that is that the NTPs and the NFPs see a lot of options, so they're not really going to push anyone towards a certain goal because they're not sort of focused in on a particular goal.
Well, anyway.
Yep. So that's the 8. I think we've done the 9. Oh, we've not done the.
We have not. We have not done. We haven't done the 9 yet. We've done 1, but we haven't done.
Yeah.
Okay, so Tom Condon, who's an Enneagram expert, says that he used to always. He doesn't. He usually starts with the 9 now because it used to be that 9s were always left to last and they felt left out. So I don't know how Emily feels right now. She looks a bit tired, which is very 9ish. So 9s are the peacemakers. They're the mediators. They're the sort of person who is very. They are actually quite tough and powerful and infallible and so on, but they're don't necessarily like asserting that power. They don't like using their anger overtly or overtly asserting themselves. They like going along with others to get along. They don't easily say no unless they really get to know the person, in which case they can say maybe, which means no for them. There's the person who tries to avoid conflict when they can, who is a bit too easily swayed by others. But at the same time, on the flip side, there's a part of them that knows what they're doing. There's a part of them that agrees to stuff and appears to let people walk over them, but it's all because they're thinking, well, if I let you walk over me now, I can get what I really want later on. If I just put up with what you're doing now, my real goals will be achieved later. I don't need to rock the boat. I don't need to make a big fuss about it. Instead, I can play the long game and get what really matters to me, which is a peaceful, easygoing life, or whatever else it is after.
This is a little bit of a cheeky interruption, but Emily, you nodded there when Jonathan said something rather manipulative about the INFJ. So do you want to say something about that?
I mean, I can definitely, out of all of the Enneagram types, I do relate so much more to the 9 than even like the visuals. Interesting.
It was that bit when she said that she like lets other people have their little victories so that you can like. That was the bit. I would like some details on that, please.
Yes.
I mean, so I don't think they're going to be watching this, but like some roommates when I was in Seattle, one of them in particular, I'm not going to,
no names.
But this individual, I actually made a video about them where I referred to her as an orange, and the other one was a grape. Blair's kneading on me right now. I found with that individual, I felt as if I was trying to avoid conflict all the time with this individual. And I just had put up with so much. Yeah, it's just something I do, and it's not always a good thing.
Jonathan, we can hear you typing.
Sorry, I'm just responding to the chat, but now I can't. Sorry. Well, if anyone talks a little bit more, I can finish.
Yeah. Go on, Emily.
Well, yeah. I mean, I can relate. I just relate so much to the 9. I don't know what my wing is. When I first did Enneagram, I thought I was a 1 or a 2. So maybe I am like a 9-1, but I think I'm a 9-8. I'm not entirely sure, but I do think I'm a 9. Like this, even in this video, it just made me realize more and more how much I relate to the 9. So
I find what do you think of this graphic here? Is this which bits don't?
yeah. mean, I feel like a lot of this stuff I can relate to. What do the different colors mean?
Well, it's a loose color coding, but we can go over this in future. I think that's what Jonathan's thinking. But yeah,
Well, if you look at the little lines, you can see that the green is conflict, to do with conflict. The yellow is to do with virtue. The light blue is with the essence. The purple is the whole. Well, the light purple is the whole idea. The dark yellow is the passions. The lime thing is kind of the green. So the light thing is the trap. Dark blue is avoidance. The orange is talking style. The other blue is defense mechanism. And the other purple is the shadow.
Yeah, Jonathan, maybe we should have talked about this early on, or maybe you already have. But a lot of times people will look at the Enneagram and they'll hear about passion, virtue, holy idea, fixation. Do you want to say a bit about that? Is it old school Enneagram? Does it still have any validity to it?
It would take a long time to talk about. It's just more like the building blocks of each Enneagram type. It's kind of more on the spiritualist side of things. It does make sense. There is a logic to it, but basically it's about different components of each type.
Yeah, what I've heard is that the virtue is the opposite of the passion. So it's almost like they're taking the mickey when when you look at some of the virtues of the type, because it seems like, well, that's completely opposite of what the type's about. So for instance, if you see for the 7, it will say virtue, sobriety. It's like, well, it sounds like the
that's the point. Virtue in the sense of this is what you're striving for. This is what happens when you're healthy.
No, it's like many types like, no, I don't. I want the thing I want.
Yeah, that's what they're aiming for. That's what the point is.
Yeah, that's like level 1. That's one of the things. So for instance, one thing I'll say is that if somebody encounters the levels, and Risa and Hudson, their idea of level 1 is sort of a Buddhist idea of almost giving up the drive, or putting it in a sort of reframing it, sort of like not having it as big a. Tom kind of describes it as wearing your Enneagram style more loosely, so you're not sort of absorbed into this sort of mono motivation. It's a more sophisticated version of the drive, where it's not as big a thing in your life. It's not a soul corrupting fixation. And you quite frequently get that in films. We've done a hangout with Tom Condon and the Enneagram in movies. So, for example, you can have a lot of types that are, and usually they do it with the 3, where the drive for success has become a soul corrupting fixation. And they actually will achieve what they wanted, but they've like alienated themselves, and when they actually get what they want. And in certain plots called the redemption plot, it's where they actually give up the quest, realizing it's corrupting them, and they actually win by losing. And it was a sort of an ironic comment on American values at the time, of people being too, it's sort of a comment on the E3 culture, I suppose. And these kind of films happened in the 70s.
Well, still happened today.
Yeah.
I mean, Whiplash is a good example.
Yeah, I mean, Hollywood loves to make them, and then they love to make money from them, so they're more successful from them. So,
well, obviously, Hollywood types can really relate to that sort of thing. Just say, because they're all 3s. Sarcastic. Yeah. So another thing about 9 is there's a laziness. It's often associated with laziness. The best way to go in, like,
I mean, that's something I've always struggled with, is laziness.
Yeah, well, as I was going to say, laziness in the psychological sense, in the sense of not asserting your own needs, or not doing what you should be doing, or maybe doing it instead, going along with others. It can be. It's not laziness it's not necessarily laziness in the sense of not working hard or anything. Some 9s can be very hard working to avoid problems, like someone who works really hard at home. Someone who works really hard at their work, and then goes home and lies in their bed or whatever. That can be a 9ish thing.
Yeah.
Psycho.
me. That's literally me. I mean,
Yeah.
trying to combat that. I've been trying to, but like, yeah, that's how I am.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so somebody was asking in the chat about the psychological problem. These are the general patterns of the types and some problems they can have. So five-ish ones. It's like there's things in Kretschmer about when you look at he called it the schizotypes, and there's some debate as to whether he was describing intuitives or introverts. I actually think now he was describing introverts rather than intuitives, but that's typical of, like, if you think of the really unhealthy 5, where they get a little alienated and get a little bit schizoid. So these are the general patterns, but it's nothing. So there's nothing set in stone. Yeah, and when I initially saw the phrase hypomanic, I thought that sounds a bit weird, because if it's below manic, it just means that full manic is like crazy, and so it's just below full crazy is hypomanic. Just below the full manic.
Yeah.
A future hangout this will hopefully be.
Yeah, I'll need to research hypomanic. That sounds like an older term.
Yeah. Kretschmer called it for a time, and Kersey thought it was describing the SP as the hypomanic temperament. But
I will say also that all 9s can be a bit INFJ-ish, and all INFJs can be a bit 9-ish in terms of...
yes, yeah.
9s can be sort of... 9's one of those types that often relates to a little bit of each Enneagram type, or can understand people to a certain degree, no matter who they are, and they're accommodating them, and they don't necessarily truly understand the other person, but they might pick up enough of their pattern to figure out how to accommodate them and go on with them. So even if you're not an INFJ 9, you can still have that kind of mild INFJ trait. But it's all about one's own peace and one's own harmony.
So here are some Enneagram books, and I can get Jonathan's view on them. So a fun book, lots of drawings. It's got a good joke about the 5 on it. There is a couple of 5s on their first date. There we go. Best date they've ever had. So it's got a personality in it. So it's a good, and so and one of the things this has is it doesn't have the error of types can only disintegrate and integrate in one direction. So that's something that will come about with the older Enneagram. Is it will say something like the 5 disintegrates to 7 and integrates to 8. Whereas now we think that, it can go to the high and low side of the 8, the high and low side of the 7. And that actually has that in this, where we'll have, so for instance, it will have these patterns in. So for instance, with the 5s. So it's not out of date, this book, even though it was done in 1994. So it will say, so it has like the high and low side aspect to it. So Jonathan, what do you think of that book?
It's a good introduction.
Right. Then we have this book, Personality Types by Russo and Hudson. What about that?
It's really good, but it's also a bit out of date. It's got a lot of in-depth stuff. But
yeah. This might be your favourite. I'm not sure.
Well, I think all Enneagram books are about 4. This is no exception, but it's still really good in terms of this instinctual subtypes. Is a good introduction stuff. And going into the psychological defense mechanisms of each type.
Yeah,
a lot of it's derived directly from Naranjo.
Yeah, it's almost like a Naranjo tribute.
Yeah, so there's some stuff that may be disagreeable. Certain descriptions may be a bit flawed, but in general, it's all pretty good.
This might be good for people. What do you reckon to this one, Jonathan? Understanding the Enneagram.
Yes, that's all good as well.
Yeah, I think it might actually be worth reading this before you read this one, or because there is extra stuff in here about the psychological categories. There's a chapter on that where it links them up with the various things in the DSM.
Bear in mind, though, these are both kind of out of date. These two, even the DSM stuff is a bit out of date.
This is maybe their most up to date. Reese and Hudson's most up to date.
That's probably their best introductory book as well.
Yeah, and it's got the instincts in as well. So a nice introduction, a little bit on the levels. So and you can also test yourself. It's got a long version of the Riso Hudson Enneagram type indicator in there. And this is a used book, so it's got somebody's previous answers in. And then we've got Wisdom of the Enneagram, which is a more up-to-date book. And that actually has the instinctual variants in. And then we have The Career Within You. And we also have a book that Jonathan has bought but probably not looked at yet. The Enneagram and NLP. So if you're into NLP. What do you think of it, Jonathan?
Sorry.
That's a high praise from.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to give a high praise. It's okay, but it's not.
What's good about it? What's bad about it?
I don't know. It's been a while since I read it.
Oh, you've read it? Oh, okay.
No, well, it's been a while since I've glanced at it.
Okay. Just to blow Jonathan's trumpet a little bit more, he has 25 bookshelves. They don't all have books on, but there you go. Oh, strong 5 picks.
How many do you have? That you've got more books than me.
I only have about 17.
Yeah, but you've got all. See,
they've not been read, though. They've not been read.
A lot of mine haven't been read either. Most of mine haven't been read.
They're planned to be read.
Yours look like they'll collapse any moment.
Well, maybe.
Your bookshelves stress me out.
Pardon?
Your bookshelves stress her out. One day, we'll go be doing a video, then suddenly, boom, everything collapses. Just
it'll be like a snuff hangout.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, you will die covered in books. He died. So Jonathan, he died as he lived. Unread books killed him.
We could climax on you if you show me your Stay Puft Marshmallow Man and the story behind it.
I'm not. There's no story behind it. It's my Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. I've had it since I was a boy, and I love him. Ghostbusters is a fantastic movie. Watch it.
Now, which one do you think is better, Ghostbusters 1 or 2?
Ghostbusters 1 is objectively better, but Ghostbusters 2 is a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think the ending's better for Ghostbusters 2.
It's more upbeat. Yeah. Ghostbusters is a bit more upbeat. It's kind of a retread of the first one in some ways, but the first one was so good, I forgive it.
Yeah, I like the second one. I just think the ending is better.
Also, the cartoon, The Real Ghostbusters, is really good, especially the first season.
Yeah, and who was the script editor on The Real Ghostbusters? J. Michael Straczynski, who went on to write Babylon 5. And since Babylon 5 didn't do one at the time, but it did one on DVDs. And then since then, loads of films by J. Michael Straczynski.
And the new Ghostbusters remake is really bad. Don't watch it. But anyway. Well, thank you, Emily. This was nice talking to you.
It was nice talking to you guys too. I think we should probably end it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just because, but
is this your longest video on your channel?
How many hours is
it? 2 hours.
No.
2 hours long. No.
I've had ones that are. I mean, I've had quite a few that are over 2 hours.
Oh, good.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, is there anything you guys want to shout out or want me to put in the description of the video?
Probably just the channel and maybe some videos. But
yeah, and to remind the audience that we've got Catherine Favre, we've got 11 hangouts on the channel, and she even took, there's 3 hangouts in the middle on the body language of the types. The latest one, Catherine Farber, number 11, which was looking at the combinations of Jungian type and Enneagram type. And what I did is because that was for an audience that didn't really know about Jungian type, I thought, okay, let's simplify this and just talk about the Kersey temperaments, because
I don't think we succeeded in simplifying it.
Well, but I just think
that
that
was getting all over the.
Yeah, but I think the Enneagram people are interested in motivation, so and Kersey temperament's about motivation, so I thought, well, these are the NFs, and then
I think that's what you think happened in your head, but if you actually go back and watch it, it might be a bit more all over the place.
It was 4 hours long. It was
it was a long.
It was good though. Somebody once said to me that they thought that these hangouts were just sort of private recordings of us enjoying ourselves, and they weren't meant for the general public.
That person is not wrong. Anyway,
so there we go with Owned Up.
Right.
Yeah, so as the name channel says, it's ski, so Socionics, Kersey, Enneagram. I think Kersey temperament theory is very underrated. People just think of it as a dumbed down version of MBTI without any functions in, but he has very, very good INTP reasons for not using functions. It's more like a systems field theory, and
I'm not a huge fan.
You know what?
I'm not a huge fan.
Oh, well, you know, we can discuss this in future, like a defense of Kersey. So I recommend that book for people. Please understand me too.
I'm just kidding.
And then his most INTP book, Personology. All right. Well, okay. Well, I can defend Kersey this way. Do you know about Dario Nardi, Emily?
What?
Dario Nardi's done the EEG research on the personality types.
Oh yeah.
Well, he was mentored by Linda Behrens, and Linda Behrens was mentored by David Kersey. So it's all part of the same tree, and Dario Nardi uses the same terminology. So there you go. Defense of Kersey by Dario.
I'm just not a huge fan of Kersey, but
okay, nice reframe.
I'll be more open to him.
All right, okay.
You guys love how I have like Blair just like snuggled up.
What Jonathan does, he likes like that sort of thing.
Yeah, I can tell she's comfortable. Or he. Is it he or she? She. I can tell she's comfortable. Just.
Yeah, I like Jonathan's reactions to cute animals.
I know. Obvious NF reactions.
She's a good girl.
So I got some. Just a final question, Emily. Is would you describe yourself as a cat owner, a dog owner, or a cat guardian and a dog guardian, or is that too PC?
What?
Yeah, some people it's like because it's like oh that's too much to like say that they own a fellow animal. No, I'm just their guardian.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
I mean, I say I own my cats and dogs, but I actually see them more as like my siblings.
Right.
So, I mean, you can't really say that to people, but like I think that they have fully formed personalities, and I don't know. They're like, for example, when I thought I lost Blair this morning, I was very distraught because she's such a sweet girl.
There we go. We can end on Emily's humanitarian streak. good heart.
Yeah, I hope you guys have a great day. And any final thoughts from you guys?
No, it's that everybody watching this, please subscribe to the channel. You'll see lots of Jonathan on there.
I've talked for so long, just don't have any thoughts left.
Yeah, and if you guys have any, well, just the audience in general, anybody watching this, if you guys have any videos you want Ben and Jonathan to do in the future, either on their channel or my channel, yeah, just let me know.
Yeah, and in terms of Socionics Model G, I've done some introductory videos which are called the usually whiteboard. So if somebody types in, probably best for the IN types, like so say I've not done INTJ yet, but say somebody types in INTP whiteboard, then they'll get an explanation of INTP. The ENFP video is only 16 minutes long, so the ENFPs might be able to get through that. Yeah. So yeah, if you just go on my channel, folks, and type in the search box whiteboard, then you'll get an introduction to Socionics Model G, which is an 8-function model of the Jungian types. And the my cover photo sort of explains how things are organized on the sort of cover page, and how each shelf is a shelf of playlists. So lots and lots of playlists. That's pretty much it. Explore, folks. See if you like it.
Yeah, I think that would be great for people to check out. And I'm gonna have, actually, I'm gonna have Jack tomorrow.
Ooh.
Talk about Socionics.
Oh, he recently did a very good video on how Chump is SLE.
Yeah, I do think he's SLE for sure.
Yeah. So you mentioned my channel yesterday in your latest video. Which videos have you seen?
I've seen a lot of your different videos. I think you have a lot of good insight. The only thing that people have said that have watched your videos is some of the videos are a little confusing or long. So.
Yes.
So.
Well, that's the way it is. That's why I did the whiteboard ones that are shorter. They're under an hour, usually about half an hour.
Yeah.
I think all told is probably the longest typology videos, or the longest channel lengthwise on YouTube, like typology wise.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think any other channel has as many videos that are as long, all told.
Yeah. Well, people can go back and like resume at a certain part. I mean, I once. What am I supposed to do? I'm supposed to do a hangout with Victor or Dario Nardi and say, "Oh, sorry, we've got to stop now. 10 minutes is the optimum time."
We did that with Catherine.
Yeah, it was those, and so we did those in the various parts. It didn't get any extra views because it doesn't work as well.
Yeah,
because YouTube goes a lot off watch time, because when people watch the videos, you have these adverts come up every now and then. So it's not. It used to be more about views. It's now about watch time. And in fact, Emily, you've got over 1,000 subscribers. You're eligible for monetizing if you also have more than 4,000 hours of view time. And I don't know if you're up to that yet.
I think we have like 4,000 million hours.
Yeah. I have the watch time. The watch time is like 6,000 over the past year, but not the viewers, because they changed it in February. The requirements for monetizing.
My watch time is, I think it's a few thousand for sure. I know it's over 4,000.
Oh, that's good. Especially considering I think you started earlier this year.
Yeah, no, I already qualified for it. They like automatically, I don't know if this is something I did a long time ago, but they automatically added me for the eligibility. Like they already have it. It's under review right now.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh yeah, that's it. That's it, folks. There's
Oh. You guys can say whatever.
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 Whatever. All right, check them out, and there's going to be some more interesting videos in the future. Again, if you guys have any recommendations of what you want to see, just let me know in the comments below. And yeah, and if you want to ever be interviewed, just let me know. So, yeah. Bye.
We could talk a little bit after the recording. So.